Okay, good morning once again one and all. So today we will understand the concept of design of knuckle joint. Okay, so first of all let us understand what is joints. So basically there are two types of joint. The first one is a detachable and second one is a permanent joint. So again in detachable joint we have two types, sliding joints and a fixed joint. So in sliding joint again we have a knuckle joints, pin link joints. In fixed joints we have quarter joints as well as the joint using fasteners. So in your particular syllabus we will understand the design of a sliding joint, that is a knuckle joint, as well as the design of fixed joint, that is a quarter joint. Then we will also understand the joints which are permanent, that is a riveted joints, welded joints, braced joints, solder joints and chemically bonded joints. So these are the types of the joints which is categorized in the following manner. Now let us understand first of all knuckle joint. Now it is used to connect two rods whose axes either coincide or intersect and lie on the one plane. A knuckle joint is a joint which is used, let us say it is a rod, there is a rod A and let us say there is a rod B. So these two rods are connected with the help of this knuckle joint, and what is the condition? The axes of these two rods should coincide or intersect and lie in the one plane. So in such condition we can use this knuckle joint. I hope it is clear to all of you. Now next is the construction of these joints permits limited angular movement between the rods about the axis of pin. It is basically used to transmit the axial tensile force. It is popular in machines and structures. Now let us understand first of all the applications. This knuckle joint between is used as an application, that is a joint between tie bars and roof trusses, joint between the links of suspension bridge, joints in the valve mechanism of the reciprocating engine, fulcrum for the levers, joint between the links of bicycle chain, etc. So these are the some applications where the design criteria of the knuckle joint suits and it is used correspondingly. Okay. Now first of all let us understand the components of knuckle joint. Now basically there are three main components. The first one is a fork end. Okay. Now this fork end, if you see, it is the structure is like a fork. Okay, so these are the two forks. Okay, and this is, let us say, a rod, call it as a rod A. Okay, so the rod A is having a fork end, the two forks, that is why it is called as a fork end. Let us say this is a rod having some diameter, and let us say this is nothing but the enlarged diameter of the rod. And the second component is nothing but the eye end. So let us call this as a rod B. So this rod B is having at the end the eye. Now this eye, inside this eye, the third component, that is called as a pin, and this portion is called as a pin head, right? So this pin head and the pin will fit inside this eye and the fork, and in this way with the help of this pin, this rod A and rod B will get connected to each other. Now the condition is that we have to design this knuckle joint, that is we have to do the stress analysis of a different parts, because this knuckle joint will be subjected to the tensile force, and because of this axial tensile force different loading or different stresses will be created in the different parts, and what are the stresses created in the different parts, that we have to understand. Okay, now first of all let us understand the free body diagram of a forces, because it is very important to understand the free body diagram, that is the forces acting on this knuckle joint under the loading condition. Now basically this free body diagram is constructed using a principle that action and reaction are equal and opposite. It is based on the principle action and reaction are equal and opposite. Okay, now let us understand how the forces are determined by using this principle. Now basically first of all consider this rod A. Okay, now this rod A is having the fork end, which this is called as a fork end. So consider the rod A having with a fork end. Now you can see that this rod A is subjected to horizontal force P to the left side, right? This rod A is subjected to the horizontal force P to the left side, right? Now we know that as per the principle, the sum of all the forces acting on this rod A must be equal to 0. The sum of all the forces acting on rod A should be equal to 0. Okay, so obviously to satisfy this equilibrium condition, what will happen? To the right side there should be a force P which is equal and opposite to this force which is acting towards the left. Now this force P is divided equally at the ends of the force, that is, it is considered as a P by 2 and P by 2, right? So this force P, which is equal and opposite, for the equilibrium condition to be maintained, is divided into the two parts, P by 2 and P by 2, acting on the two ends of the force. So I hope you have understand the forces acting on the fork end of the rod, that is a rod A. Now once we understand this, let us consider the second part. Now consider a rod B with the I end. Let us say this is a rod B with the I end. It is subjected to the horizontal force P towards the right. Now again same, the sum of all the forces acting on the B, that is rod B, should be equal to 0. So this, so the force P, there should be a force P which is acting to the left of the I end, this force which is equal and opposite to this force P. Okay, so now in this way we have understand that how these forces P are acting and maintaining the equilibrium condition. Now let us understand the forces acting on this pin. We have understand the forces acting on the rod A, that is a fork end, as well as the I end. Now let us understand the forces acting on the pin. Okay, now basically the forces acting on this particular pin are equal and opposite reactions. I will write here, the forces acting on the pin are equal and opposite reaction, equal and opposite reaction of forces acting on the fork end as well as the forces acting on the I end. So this P by 2 will be opposite to this P by 2, this P by 2 will be opposite to this P by 2, and this P will be opposite to this P. So in this way you can see that at three positions the force is acting on the pin, that is P by 2, P by 2, P and P by 2. So now basically because of this particular forces P by 2, P and P by 2 which are acting on the pin, apart from the stresses acting in this I end and the fork end, this pin will be subjected to the two types of forces. Now first of all let us understand what type of stresses or will be created in this particular pin. Okay, now the pin, basically when this pin is tight, try to understand this. Now see, this pin will be fitted inside this fork end as well as this is a fork end as well as this is a I end. Okay, now when this particular pin is tight in the I and the fork, when the, I will write here, when the pin is tight in the I end and the fork end, right, when this pin is tight, fitted tightly inside this fork end, because this pin is going to fit inside this fork and the eye, means it will connect the fork end and the eye end of the rods. It is two rods A and B. So when this particular pin is tight inside the eye and the fork, okay, as well as considering these forces P by 2 and P by 2, okay, this pin will be subjected to double shear. This pin will be subjected to double shear, means what, it will shear at this particular point, it will shear at this particular point, and it will shear at this particular point. I hope you understand this. Okay, so I will show you in the next slides how this pin is sheared, that is, it is called as a double shear, right? So it will be getting sheared at this particular point and at this particular point, because you can see that we can make it more clear. So let me draw this at this. Okay, so this is a portion. Okay, so this is a portion of the pin which is inside the eye, right, and this is the portion of the pin, let me call this as a T1, let me call this as a T, and let me call this as a T2. So this T portion which is inside the eye, okay, will get removed, that is, will get sheared, means this T portion will come out like this. Okay, so it will get sheared at this particular point and it will get sheared at this particular point, right? So when the pin is tight in the eye and the fork, failure occurs due to the shear, and basically it will shear at these two particular points, or you can say parts. That is why we can say that this pin is subjected to the double shear. Again, this is a sliding joint, right? So when the pin is loose, okay, when the pin is loose, it will be subjected to the bending moment. It will be subjected to the bending moment. So we have to do the stress analysis of this pin for both, that is the shear as well as the bending, and we have to design this particular pin for shear failure as well as the bending failure. So I hope it is clear to all of you. Okay, now let us understand this diagram. Okay, now basically this is called this is the, you can say, the schematic diagram of this particular knuckle joint. Okay, now you can see that let us first of all understand the components. So this is the fork end, this is the eye end. Okay, here the pin head is shown. This is the pin head. Okay, here you can see the loads are acting P, right? Now you can see this T. What is this T? T is nothing but a portion of the pin which is inside this particular eye. Okay, T1 and T1 is nothing but a portion of the pin which is inside the fork, right? Is it clear? Next, then we have this D1. Okay, so D1 is nothing but the diameter of the pin. Okay, then next let us consider the diameter of this rod, that is a rod B obviously, and the diameter of the rod A as D. So diameter of the rod we will consider as a D. So these are nothing but a dimensions we are assuming to design. So D is nothing but a diameter of the rod, right? Then you can see this D3. D3 is nothing but this is nothing but a diameter of the pin head, because you can see that pin is in this manner, right? So the diameter of this pin head is assumed to be a D3. D2 is nothing but the diameter of this particular fork end. Okay, diameter of a fork end. So you can see this is the outer end. Okay, so this, yeah, we can assume this is nothing but the diameter of this fork end. Okay, is it clear? So we'll get more clear now. You can refer any of the figure. This figure I have explained you just for your understanding. This figure is available in some books. Okay, so you can refer that figure as well. You can refer this figure also. This figure is available in the PhD. So this figure is available in the PhD. I will tell you the exact number at which page this figure is available, so you need not, it is not necessary for you to remember. So this is available at PhD 7.139. So you open PhD page 7.139. okay, so in this PhD page number 7.139, this particular diagram is given. So I have considered, you can use this diagram also, I have considered all the notations, that is D1, D, D3, D, T1, T2, based on the PhD only. Okay, so there is no need to remember all the dimensions, as well as the empirical relations. Okay, the empirical relations, as I said that will be also using empirical relations along with the stress analysis, where it is not necessary to do the stress analysis. We'll directly use the empirical relation. For example, we can use D1 is equal to D, or we can use D2 is equal to 2D, or we can use D3 is equal to 1.5D. These are nothing but the empirical relation based on some past user experience, design experience. So these empirical relations are also provided on this PhD 7.139. I hope it is clear to all of you. Okay, so now let us understand the nomenclature for this figure. Okay, so it is same as the last one. Okay, so D is nothing but a diameter of the rod, right? D is nothing but a diameter of rod, that is rod A and B. D1 we have considered diameter of the pin. You can see here, you can see diameter of the pin. Pin means what? Knuckle pin. D2 is the outer diameter of the eye. Outer diameter of the eye means what? Outer diameter of eye means what? Okay, so basically they have considered this. You can see D2, outer diameter of the eye. I have shown here. This is eye now, or you can consider this one also same. So this is nothing but the outer diameter of the eye. This is nothing but the eye, and the outer diameter we have considered as a D2. Okay, then D3 is the diameter of the pin head. So this diameter you can see here consider D3. Okay, diameter of the pin head. If you want, let me clear up this is the diameter D3. Okay, so it will get more clear. T is the thickness of the eye. Thickness of the eye means what? This. Okay, the portion, this portion, okay, T, right, inside which the part of the pin is connected, or you can understand here also. See, this is nothing but the T, thickness of the eye, and this is nothing but the thickness of the fork will be same. This is T1, T1. Okay, so T is the thickness of the eye, and obviously the part of the pin which will be inside this eye will be also equal to T, and the remaining part will be T1 and T1, which will be the inside this fork and the two parts of the fork. I hope you are getting clear everything. Okay, so next one is the thickness of the fork, and T2 is the thickness of the pin head. So this thickness I will again move on back side. If you I will erase this all, you can see the thickness na. Let us say this is a pin head, so this thickness of the pin head will be T2. Okay, so this is how we have considered the dimensions. Now the remaining dimensions, but important, this is, you can see this 1.2D and 1.1D. Now what is this 1.2D and 1.1D? Okay, this 1.2D and 1.D are nothing but, these are nothing but a diameter. This is nothing but the enlarged end of the rod. This is called as the enlarged end of the rod A, and this one is called as the enlarged end of the rod B, or the I end, and this A is called as the fork end. So this enlarged end of the rod is considered as a, let us say, D1, and you can consider it as a D2. Okay, doesn't matter. So from this what you understand, this enlarged end of the fork end is considered as, let us say, D is considered as, capital D is considered as 1.2D, or you can consider as a D1, and this capital D2 is considered as a 1.2D. Sorry, not 1.2D, it is here 1.1D, this one. Okay, so I hope you understand this. So the enlarged end of the rod is considered as a 1.2D, and enlarged end of the eye end is considered as a D2 is considered as a 1.1D. Okay, so these are nothing but the empirical relations what we have considered. It is available in the PhD. So I hope now and all you have understand the dimensions for this particular knuckle joint. Okay, so now let us design this knuckle joint and do the stress analysis. So let us take in some statement. Design a knuckle joint to transmit the axial tensile load of 50 kilonewton. Okay, so let us understand the procedure now. Okay, what is the first step? The part 1 is selection of material. What is the first step? The part 1 is selection of material. Now basically, what is the loading condition? You have to understand the loads are subjected to axial tensile load. Loads are subjected to axial tensile load. So basically the loading is the tensile loading condition, right? So basically you will be selecting some ductile material. Okay, so what will be the selection criteria? Yield strength will be the selection criteria, which is given as SYT, right? The first thing. Secondly, the pin is subjected to the shear and bending stress. Already I have explained you. The pin will be subjected to the shear. Basically it will be subjected to the double shear. Okay, basically it will be subjected to the double shear, and second one is the bending. Okay, so strength is the selection criteria, so we have to design this knuckle joint on the basis of a strength, that is a yield strength. Okay, next is on the strain basis the material for two rods and pin is selected as plain carbon steel grade C35, and so you open your PhD design data book, go to the PhD page number 1.1. One second, hold on. So since the rods are subjected to the axial tensile load, so yield strength is the selection criteria. Again, pin is subjected to the shear and the bending stresses. So again, the strength is the selection criteria. So we'll select a plain carbon steel, that is a ductile material C35 from PhD design data book 1.9. Okay. Now if you look on this page PhD 1.9, you will find that for C35. Now basically why I have selected C35, because now this, one second. Okay, so why I have selected C35, so that was the point. So now basically there are different types of grades available here, so you can go for C20, you can go for C30, you can go for C40. So you have already understand what are the criteria for selection of material. So availability of the raw material, okay, then cost, okay, then manufacturing considerations, right, and then the loading conditions. Okay, so if I'm going for the higher end, maybe C50, C60, okay, so that will obviously increase the cost of the material, because for this particular knuckle joint, which is transmitting subjected only to axial tensile load, okay, so no need to go for the higher end of the material, and we will also not select a very low grade, because it will our design will fail. So we'll try to go for the optimum condition, that is you can go for C30 or you can go for C35 also. So if it is C30, C35, is it okay? So for I am selecting C35, just slightly higher, okay, because we are considering some assumption that we are neglecting the stress concentration. Okay, so that stress concentration part we will also cover in the factor of safety. So for that, yield strength is 31 kgf per mm square, so multiply by 10, you will get 310 newton per mm square. So we have selected a grade C35 material from PhD 1.9, which is having yield strength as a 310 newton per mm square. Now we have to do the design analysis, that is stress analysis, and we have to see that this material, or that is the design, that is the design of knuckle joint under the loading, tensile loading of 50 kN will not fail. So all the stresses will be under this limit, that is HYT is equal to 310 newton per mm square. So HYT is the failure criteria for this particular design. Now already we have understand the factor of safety. Now basically how to select a factor of safety, that we have already understand what are the different factors. Now here, due to the, now obviously we are designing a static loading conditions, right? So already I have explained you in the videos that what is static loading, what is dynamic loading and all, right? So now the loading is static in case of the knuckle joint, that is a tensile and the shear in case of the pin, as well as to account for the effect of shear stress concentration. As I said that we are assuming that the stress concentration, right, the stress concentration we are neglected, so that can be accounted for the factor of safety. So we'll select, now don't, again I have already explained you in the videos that you, if you are going for a higher factor of safety, obviously that will make your design safe. Okay, but again you can't increase the factor of safety up to the certain limit as well. Okay, because again that will also increase the cost of the material and ultimately the cost of the product. So for a static loading, whenever the design is subjected to the static loading, when any machine element component is subjected to static loading, I have already given you some range. So we'll select it 1.5 to 2, in a range of 1.5 to 2, or even you can take 1.2 to 2, 1.5 also. So this range is sufficient, but we'll fix some range. Okay, so we'll keep it as a 1.5 to 2 for the static loading. For dynamic loading we will slightly increase. Okay, next, so I am selecting a factor of safety as 1.2. You can also go for 1.5, you will get a design correct, again depending upon the factor. So ultimately you have to do the optimum. analysis. Now part 3 is, see these all the steps. What was the first step? Part 1 selection of material, part 2 is the factor of safety, and now part 3 calculation of allowable or permissible stresses. I am repeating, you please watch all the videos where I have taught you already what is allowable stresses, what is factor of safety, what are the modes of failure, what are the principal stresses. Okay, so all that basics will be helpful to you over here. So let us understand the calculation of allowable or permissible stresses. Now what is allowable and permissible stresses? We have already understand. I will not go into the detail now. So allowable strength, first of all. Now what is the loading condition? Tensile loading condition. Okay. Now let us understand the allowable strength. What is allowable strength? So allowable strength or a tensile strength is calculated. How we calculate it? Sigma t, which is nothing but a design stress, or you can also call it as a allowable stress. Call it as a design stress also. Okay, so sigma t is given by syt upon factor of safety, because factor of safety we already define as syt upon allowable stress, right? So from this formula we are getting a allowable stress. So syt upon fs, what is syt? 310. So what is the design stress? Tensile strength 1.50. So this sigma t is nothing but the allowable or permissible stress. Means what? The tensile stresses in any part of this particular knuckle joint. So wherever the tensile stresses are acting, wherever the tensile stresses are created, that should not exceed this 155 Newton per mm square. This is a permissible, allowable, means you cannot go beyond this 155 Newton per mm square, otherwise your design is failed, right? So now you might have understand that, let us see, if you have selected C30, the sigma t would be somewhere, let us say 130 or 140 Newton per mm square. Okay, so as you go on increasing the material grade, the sigma t will also go on increasing. I hope it is clear to all of you. Okay, so you have to go for the allowable compressive or crushing strength. Now what is crushing stress? That also we have understand in the particular videos. So now I will explain you further that the pin is obviously placed inside this eye. Okay, this pin is placed inside the eye as well as the fork. Okay, let us say this is a fork, let us say this is a fork, and let us say this is a eye. Now obviously this pin is a some kind of material, right? Obviously a ductile material which is placed inside the another ductile material, that is the eye and the fork. So obviously, as I have explained earlier, that the compressive stresses, that is a crushing stresses, will be created or will be acted at this particular pin and inside the eye. I will go back here to explain you more. I will explain you in the detail while designing that also, but just for your understanding I will go here. You can see this. Okay, you can see this area. Okay, this is nothing but the area where this pin will be inserted or rested. Okay, you can see this is nothing but the area, this inside area. Okay, so here in this area and on the surface of the pin, okay, the stresses which are created are nothing but the localized compressive stresses, or you can also call it as a crushing stresses. I hope it is clear to all of you. Okay, so we'll understand this in detail, don't worry about it. Okay, now what is the next part? Allowable shear stresses, sorry, allowable compressive stresses. So normally we take sigma c is equal to 1.22 2 times of tensile strength, because the compressive strength is more, as should be more as compared to the tensile strength. So no need to go for the calculation of this, directly you can take 1.222 times of sigma t. So for sigma c, that is for the knuckle joint, I will consider it as a 1.5 times into sigma t. Okay, because this much is sufficient to sustain the compressive stresses. Okay, and next is allowable shear stress. Now already I have explained you different types of theories of failure. Okay, so that concept is also useful over here. What are the different types of theories of failure? Maximum principal stress theory. What does it says? It says that the principal stress is equal to syt, sigma 1 is equal to syt or SYT, SUT. Then maximum shear stress theory. What does it stress? SSY. What is SSY? Yield strength in shear. SSY is the yield strength in shear, is always half of the yield strength in tensile, that is SSY is equal to point. So this is called as a maximum shear stress theory. This is nothing but a maximum principal stress theory. So again, please go back and watch the videos and brush up your basics to understand this. Okay, so now to calculate a allowable shear stress, we will use this principal shear stress maximum shear stress theory. What does it say? Maximum shear stress theory, SSY is equal to 0.5 times of SYT, right? Now we know that tau, that is allowable shear stress, is equal to SSY upon, that is a yield strength in shear upon factor of safety. But what is SSY? SSY is 0.5 times SYT divided by f of s. So tau is equal to 0.5 times SYT upon f of s is equal to 0.5 into 3 by 10 upon 2. So in this way I have calculated this allowable shear stress, that is 77.50 Newton per mm square. Okay. So in this way we have to first of all calculate allowable strength, that is a tensile, allowable compressive or crushing strength, allowable shear stress. I hope it is clear to all of you. Okay. Now part 4. Now in part 4 we will start with the stress analysis or the design analysis, right? So in part 4, first of all we will do the stress analysis, that is we will find the dimensions of D, D1 and D2 by doing a stress analysis. So what is D? D is nothing but a diameter of the rod. D1 and D2 are nothing but the enlarged diameter of the rod, that is I end and the fork end. So this D1 we have considered as a fork end and D2 as the I end, right? D2 we have considered as a I end. I hope you understand this. So D1 and D2 we will find by using empirical relations, and D we have to do the stress analysis for this. To find out the D, that is the first step, is to find out the diameter of the rod. Very important step. So step 1 is the tensile failure of the rod. Now let us understand. So we know that the diameter of the rod D, I will just move on back for more clarity. So this is a figure. So this, the diameter of the rod is nothing but a D, as well as the radius is nothing but it is same. Okay. So in both the cases, if let us say, I'll go here, you can see if this force P is acting, there is a tensile force P is acting, a tensile force P is acting at the two ends of the rod A as well as the B. Okay, so if let us say this is the rod having a diameter D subjected to a tensile force, very simple. So what will happen, let us say this is some plane XX. So in this plane, this due to this force P, the tensile stresses will be created and this rod will get break due to the tensile load, means this rod will become like this, right? This is the condition rod. So this area is called as the area resisting the tensile failure. So this is also called as the area resisting the tensile failure. So this area will be obviously equal to pi by 4 d square, because it's a circular cross sectional area. I hope it is clear to all of you. Okay, and then the D1, diameter of the enlarged diameter of the rod A, that is a fork end, and for I end we have considered the T2. So this you can take with respect to D only, that is by using some empirical relation. No need to go for the stress analysis. Okay, so let's move forward and start with, okay, so in this picture it will be clear to all of you. So you can see that because of this force P, okay, which is acting, that is P is nothing but a tensile load, so you can see that this rod can break into the two pieces due to the tension. Okay, so this circular area which I have shown, this is nothing but the area resisting the tension, is very important. Okay, so now tensile failure of the rod. Now what is the basic formula? All the basic formulas are available on the PHG 7.1 as I have mentioned in the videos. So sigma T is equal to P upon A, right? A basic formula. Stress is equal to load upon area. So now what is P? P is nothing but the load which is given. You have to design for a 50 kilonewton, so 50 into 10 raised to 3. sigma t is nothing but the allowable tensile stress. What is the allowable tensile stress? We have already calculated 1.55 into pi by 4 d square. Now from this we are getting diameter is equal to 20.26. So just either you can go for d is equal to 21 or 22. I am just making it 22 because we are normally rounding it off. Okay, so just round it up and take the higher one. Okay, because it is always uh, you can say good to take a higher value. Instead of taking 20, take 21 or 22. Okay, in some books or some prefer to take directly d is equal to 25 also, but no need to increase diameter in such a range. Okay, so d is equal to 20.26, so I am getting d is equal to, so now this diameter which we have got after doing the stress analysis is nothing but the safe diameter. So whenever you are selecting a material having yield strength Sy is equal to 310 Newton per mm square, for which sigma t, it is allowable design stress, after dividing it by the factor of safety I am getting 55 Newton per mm square. So whenever you are selecting a diameter 22.0 mm, this allowable tensile stress will not exceed 125 Newton per mm square, because you have calculated by using a allowable stress only. This is a one method. I hope you understand this. Okay, now next is empirical relation. Now using empirical relations, the enlarged diameter of the fork d1 is determined. So what is d1? Enlarged diameter of the fork or the rod A. So what is this is already given in your PhD design data book. So remember that in that figure itself it is given. I have shown there. So 1.2d, and using empirical relations, the enlarged end diameter of the ID2 is 1.1d. So 1.1 into 22 is equal to 24.20 mm. Is it clear? So these first two steps are very simple, I hope. Now next is deciding the thickness of the eye end and the fork end. Now again, very simple, we can use the empirical relations also. All these are mentioned in your particular figure diagram, you can see. So what is this t? This t is nothing but the thickness of eye, means, or you can also call it as the amount of pin inside this particular eye. T1 is nothing but the, this T1 is nothing but the thickness of fork, and T2 is the thickness of pin head. If you are not getting clear, you can see here, this is T, this is T1, this is T1, and this is T2. So thickness of fork end, eye end, and pin end. I hope it is clear to all of you. Okay, so just again going, see, always follow the steps, part 1, part 2, part 3, very important. It will make the calculation easy. Okay, so both these dimensions are calculated, sorry, both these dimensions are decided on the basis of empirical relation. So t we have taken 1.25d, so I'm getting t is equal to 27.50. You can round up. So again, as I said, it's up your call. You can go for 28 also. I'm going for 30. Doesn't matter. Ultimately your design should be stress safe. Design should be safe means what? All the stresses which you have calculated by selecting the particular dimension should be below the allowable stresses or the permissible stresses or the design stresses. Okay, then T1 is the thickness of the fork end. I have taken as a 0.75d, so 60.50. I am going for the 18 mm. Okay, so again here you can also take 17 mm also, right? Now the step 4th, which is very important, deciding the dimensions of the pin. Now what is d1? One second. Okay, so now step number 4 is to decide the dimensions of the pin, that is d1 and d2 is nothing but a double shell failure. Then we have step number 5, and again then next steps, that is a crushing failure of eye as well. Okay, so this we will understand in the next lecture. So I hope I will just revise. So we, in this particular part, that is a design of knuckle joints, I will be dividing this video into the two parts, design of knuckle joint part 1 and part 2. So in this part we have understand the basics of some applications of the knuckle joint, then the diagram and the dimensions and the notations available in the PAG 7.139. Then we started designing a knuckle joint to transmit the axial tensile load of 50 kilonewton. So first was the selection of material, selected the material from the PAG 1.9. Then we decided a factor of safety. So we have decided that the factor of safety for static loading will be 1.5 in a range of 2, 1.5 to 2. Then we calculated the design or allowable or permissible stresses, sigma t, sigma c. So basically why we have calculated 3, because this knuckle joint is subjected to all the 3 stresses: tensile, compressive, that is a crushing stress, not compressive, you can uh, accurately call it as a crushing stress, or you can also call it as a localized compressive stress. So acting at a specific, localized means what, acting at a specific area only. And then allowable shear stress based on the maximum shear stress theory. Then we calculated the diameter of a rod D by using a stress analysis. Then we calculated D1 and D2, enlarged diameter of fork D1 and enlarged diameter of D2 by using empirical relations. And in step 3 we have calculated the thickness of eye and the fork end T and T1 by using again a empirical relations. So these empirical relations are already mentioned in PAG 7.139, no need to remember. Now the step 4 will be to decide the dimensions of the pin. So as I said that the pin is subjected to the double shear. So you can see in this picture, I will explain you in the next video how to do the stress analysis for shear as well as the bending failure of the pin and calculate this D1. Okay, so thank you so much for this particular video.